All right, Dan, you ready to go?
Sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Get over here, TK.
the acoustic stylings of Mr. Dan Erlewine.
Cheers. And my friend TK.
Hello.
And my friend Addie Thompson.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
So this is not a super well planned event, but we have worked on it quite a bit this week. We just want to speak to the people that are starting out maybe in metalworking or even in this business completely about how we think it's important when you can to have a lathe and a milling machine in your shop. And they don't have to be huge and expensive necessarily. They can be, and who wouldn't want that? But we're going to show you some small machines and talk about things that you can do on them realistically, as much as on wood as for metal. I started out using a lathe on wood. That was my first thing. I knew you could do metal, but I started on wood
With a metal lathe.
with a metal lathe.
What kind of projects were you trying to did you have a problem you were trying to solve with the lathe? That you were trying to do something and you're
I was just trying to learn how to use it. So I started cutting things out of wood or making little bowls.
uh
In ninth grade, I was in wood shop, and one of the things we did was make a bowl on a lathe, about 6 inches in diameter, just a nice bowl, and that was a fun project.
mhm.
So it stuck with me for a long time. And then in the 70s, I ran into some people that were machinists or woodworker machinists. And that's what kind of drew me in to wanting to have such a machine. We had a friend of ours that was a guitar player in a band in Detroit that was really quite something. His name was George Brady. And he had a lever on his Telecaster or Stratocaster. I can't remember. I think it was a Tele. And he could get the B string or the G string to bend. And it was killer. And he played in a really good country band. And he had made it out of a coat hanger and the little plastic spray tops from an aerosol lacquer spray can. That was the button, and it worked. And we went off, my cousin Mark and I, we went off to make that. And I had a friend that had a Unimat lathe like I have now, and a small South Bend lathe, bigger than that. And he took on the project of trying to make one of these, and we did make it.
Mhm.
And I'd go over to his house for most of the summer. Almost every day I was hooked on it, neglecting my shop, I'm sure, and started learning how to use it. And we made a palm steel. We made a few of them, only to find out that when we went to Gibson one day, and that a week later, when we finally got done to get something, we stopped across the street at Bigsby. It just went in to take a little tour, and we saw the Bigsby palm pedal coming off the line. It was coming down on a conveyor belt being packaged. I think it was called the Bigsby palm pedal. They don't make them anymore.
Mhm.
So we gave that project up. But
How
from that
close
point,
how close was the palm pedal to what we know is like that hip shot bender? Was that kind of the same
quite
design or
ours, ours had a pad that the palm of your hand pressed back on.
oh okay.
It was mounted, and I could find a picture of it somewhere, but it wouldn't probably be very close. I still have one of the ones around here that we made with a different guy later on, but none of it ever went to market. So
Um
at the same time, then after that, my neighbor that we moved into this neighborhood, and my neighbor made steam engines, a little model railroad in his backyard, and the kids could ride around it. And he was the engineer. He could sit on the engine and drive it.
uh
Small tracks. and he had a Sears Craftsman lathe, a modern one with a quick change gearbox, not like an old one like I had. Mine was a 1940s 9-inch Sears Craftsman lathe back in Big Rapids, made by Atlas. It was an Atlas lathe, but that's who made Sears. And it had been blocked up to be a 12-inch lathe, the tailstock and the headstock, and mostly used in woodworking.
Cool.
And it was in pretty good shape. But his had gears on it, and his mill was a milling vise. It clamps to the cross slide, and you can crank it up and down. You got this milling vise going past the turning bit, and you can actually mill with that tool. And that's going to be sort of like a tool we're going to show you here.
Oh, okay, I see. I've never even thought of using a lathe like that before.
Well,
TK, oh, I wanted to ask you, like, were the South Bends, were those that one that you showed us earlier, was that something that was also sold in catalogs and stuff, or did you actually, how would a person have gotten something like that back in the day?
They were widely available through industrial supply, but they sold a lot of them as tool room lathes. Gunsmithing, the small operations in manufacturing, there'd be almost as many of those depending on the focus of the manufacturing, but they're every bit as capable and accurate and built to the same standards as their larger equipment. Once they got past, they made a 10-inch, which was still considered a benchtop machine. And after that, when you go to just 3 inches more diameter of swing on the lathe, they're 6 feet long and 3,000 pounds. So the smaller lathes, I think, though we kind of see them as residential or home shop machinist lathes, at the time they were considered just a smaller version of all the other machines made, and not necessarily like a consumer product.
So that wasn't like, were they ubiquitous in like a guy's workshop, that they might have in their garage, or was it like one in every 20 guys would have something like that and they were just kind of tinkerers or something?
Yeah, I think it was more aimed at manufacturing. I don't know how many folks were doing home shop machining at the time. Since the 20s, they've made lathes that were at least movable without construction equipment. They have legs. They were much, the castings and so forth were much less robust in the early days, but they almost looked like sewing machines, then were on hollow leg stands. And but still, I don't think they were aimed at anything beyond, light manufacturing.
Cool. All right.
But now those lathes, especially, in the last 20 years, I think the machines out of China, Taiwan, and so forth have really picked up the quality for a variety of reasons. But once these smaller machines get in the hands of people, I think that it's kind of like mine. They stay there. There's not a lot of floating around, and they're getting mighty old. So
we got a guy here in New Jersey that's clearly, you always see him on Craigslist. Like, there are very few like ones ready to be refurbished. I think he gets all of those, like he's constantly on Craigslist, but he's always got his refurbished ones up for sale on Craigslist too. They're not cheap. Like, he wants several $1,000s for, an old machine, but I don't know why I interjected that.
If it's been refurbished, that's a few $1,000s is about the price point if they're
I think so, yeah.
full shape.
If you were like, dang, I'm gonna get into this, I'm gonna get myself a large, like, serious, not like a big industrial one, but like something that you could fit in your shop. What do you think? Brand new from China, or refurbished off of Craigslist, an old South Bend? What would
I think
go?
I probably recommended somebody go with a new machine, only because there's so much to the wear and tear over time. You don't really know how it's been used. Often in production situations, a lathe was set up for one thing and used exclusively for a particular operation. So what you find is on old machines of this vintage that the wear and tear might take place in a very short distance on the bed of the lathe, so that you end up with a high degree of wear inconsistently. So I think for the price point, man, this machine we're going to show you today, I'm really impressed. It's only been here 2 days and kind of setting it up and getting it to run, and I'm really impressed with the capabilities, the torque of the motor, the smoothness, the castings. I don't think I'd be fooling with vintage machinery unless I had a background and really understand how to take care of it and maintain it or rehab it at the same time you're trying to use it.
It's so tempting though, and looking at that machine that you have downstairs, I'm just like, who wants a new machine when you can have something that looks like, something
Yeah,
that belongs in Willy Wonka's shop or something, like it,
yeah, I get it. The
If it works well and
yeah,
makes you happy, it's really worth it. TK is able to refurbish a lathe. He's a level machinist. So if I was, when I bought a better lathe, or when I moved to Snowmac, I got rid of my lathe and I bought the little Unimat that you'll see again today.
yeah,
I'd be buying one of the new imported lathes.
cool. And you did have a jet for a minute before TK brought over. Did you
Had
enjoy it?
8-9 years, I think. And I liked it. I mean, I did a lot of stuff on it. It never let me down.
Cool.
But when I met TK, it was over a Martin guitar.
Mhm.
He came by with the Martin guitar and wanted to know blah, blah, blah. And I showed him around the shop and he said something like, yeah, I got a machine shop at home, but I haven't used it in a number of years. If you know anybody that wants to buy it. And I went right out to his house and came back with a lot of stuff over a short period of time.
Yeah, I hadn't been using the tools much for a variety of reasons over the last 5 or 6 years, and I'm using them more now than I have in 20 years because I basically moved the machine shop over here, all this
Mhm.
and metric stuff, the precision tooling for measuring and laying things out, and it's all here now. So
It's a lot of tools and things.
So should we start looking at some things? You wanna head over to the machines that you got laid out?
Well, if we watch some of that video,
Oh, you want to watch some of the video first? Okay.
it might be smart.
Okay, let's take a look at this.
We could see how that goes.
Let me know when you're ready to start talking about this.
To get ready for the show, I needed a small drill press, and Elise had this that she got from some guitar repair guy. It's not a great one, but once it was. It doesn't have a handle. It was rusted. Like, look at the chuck in the table, and we cleaned it up. She's got some oil and some naphtha there and a whetstone, and she's sucking that rust out of it. And you can go on. That handle, we decided we'd make a handle on these little tools, which we did. Started out with an inch piece of aluminum. And this is on the little Unimat lathe, and Blake did this. He cut it off and he faced it off, and now he's boring it for a live center or for a drill. This is a big piece and we need a 9/16 hole. So we went through a step of drill bits, starting at a 1/4 inch, then once we got close enough to get a boring bar inside, we bored it out to the diameter we wanted.
Dan, can I ask you about that boring bar? So what's the cutter like on this? How do you are we going to take a look at how to set up on this?
You'll see it in a minute because it'll back out of there.
What's that?
That's the power feed on the little Unimat, so it's under power.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's the cutter.
Mhm.
Did
It's
you
got,
did you make this cutter or is this
I don't, I think I probably did. I've
okay?
done 30 some years. Like most likely,
Is that is there anything to that other than it looks like you used a grinder with it?
just a grinder.
Is this tip right up here? Is this the cutting? Is that
Hmm.
what's doing the cutting?
That's cutting. Everything else is falling away from it.
Okay.
But
So
you
you're
have to get enough hole to get it in to start doing it.
okay.
And you can even get a little bit of a cut drawing it backwards when you come out.
Uh-huh.
We can show a couple of varieties of the small boring bars later on. I'll pull some out.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
This is Blake setting up to get the cutting bit square to the center line. If the piece tips away from you, you're too high. So he's taking out the shim. He's trying to get it dead center. As it turned out, without that shim, it was dead center.
Dead
And
center.
there you go. That's close enough to dead center.
Okay. And explain why you want it dead center one more time.
Because he's going to come in when you cut on the machine, you don't want to be cutting below center.
Okay.
You always
What
want to center.
what is it just lead to
Or
chatter or something or is it
yeah, it will
dangerous?
up on it. At a certain point below center, it could jump up onto the bit or gouge it and tear it.
Uh-huh.
it provides the best surface finish if it's directly on the center of the
Okay.
rod.
Can you hear him?
Yeah. Yeah, would you want to be wearing safety glasses when you do this, or do you just want to squint a little harder than normal?
Watching this on the computer,
No, when you're making these cuts.
I do have my glasses are safety with the bulletproof glass.
Okay.
They're polycarbonate,
Okay.
but I often do wear a mask. Yes, depends. He's just getting this kind of tapered down a bit so he can put it. He wants to tap a thread on this thing,
Okay.
and that's a 5/16 piece of brass, and he's using the tailstock to push the die into it
Uh-huh.
and turning a little bit and then cranking it. And that's a good way to get something started.
Oh, okay.
PK
So
pointed out you can also take that tool rest and square it to the chuck.
so is the die holder, is that special for this machine or was it just
No,
happenstance that it made it up to that chuck well?
it just happened to fit right in. The bottom lever comes and hits the frame of the lathe on the bed.
Uh-huh.
So once it starts grabbing, you can just keep turning
Mhm.
the chuck and it'll ride right along the bed.
Mhm.
And if you know a lathe well and know how it's working, sometimes you could be doing that job with a die and turn the machine on, and you'll watch the die walk right into the chuck. And if you reverse it, it'll walk back out again. But I'm not saying you should run out and do that.
Yeah. It seems like it's going a pretty high RPM.
Right here, we're going to take a pause for a second. I'm just going to tell you something first.
Okay.
That didn't work out too well the earlier time to tap the 5/16 to
Uh-huh.
cut a thread on it. It ended up slipping in the jaws of that small machine.
Mhm.
And I don't think it really, the tailstock had a full enough pressure to press that die into it to get a good start. So we gave up. We started over and decided to turn a bar of brass down to 1/4 inch
Okay.
because we're just making a handle for that drill press.
Okay.
So it doesn't really matter. So he's turning it down to a 1/4 inch because we think that we could tap that easier.
Yeah.
It's a big cut. But
So like quarter 20 or something, or
Then we went to quarter 20. You can see how small this lathe is. Look at his hand. But I've had this since 1986, and it's never gone wrong. And I still love it, even though I have the bigger lathe. I wouldn't want to be without it. We went down a little bit under a quarter inch,
Mhm.
maybe 247, just so that might let this lathe be able to cut a thread a little bit easier.
Okay.
So from that point on, we did the same thing that you just saw and got that started right there. No, go back and pause. Right there, we got that thing started enough that we could put it in the chuck of the drill press and turn it into the die quite effectively and get that's even farther than we got on the little machine. At that point, you can just take it out of the drill chuck and clamp it in a vise and take the die and put it in the handle and do it by hand. Take a
Okay.
cut, back it off, take a cut, back it off, take a cut, back it off. And this is all just to give you all a lesson what this little tools can do. Now there's the same thing. You can pause that. Go back a little bit. Right there. That is a huge heavy machine. I got that from TK. It's a Rockwell drill press with all kinds of doodahs. And you can reverse it in right while you're using it. You can just press a button. It'll stop and reverse itself.
Mhm.
And it's got a very heavy table on it. But that's what you call an XY table or a compound milling vise. You all know about that. We think that's an extremely important thing to have on any drill press, just for the things that you can do so accurately.
Mhm.
And we haven't got this temporary drill press quite rigged up for that yet, as you'll see.
Okay.
Okay. These are ferrules that TK, you can pause on that. TK made these ferrules on the lathe because we're stringing that flying V up through the rear. And I just got the idea of what would it be like if we just make them run all the way through the body, a solid brass, a press fit. And we did, and they're really nice.
Yeah.
That was made on the lathe downstairs, but you can make that upstairs for sure
Mhm.
on the other machine.
Oh, on the, yeah.
Yep. The Unimat would do that, and the Grizzly that we're going to show you is a little strong, quite a bit stronger. And we know some of those, the wood swelled.
Uh-huh.
So here's another way you could use your lathe. These are furniture dolls that have step drill bits that are the same size as those dolls, and you get all that glue into a build. I turned it on the lathe to be just the right size to go inside those holes and split it and made a little flap sander out of it
Mhm.
so that the ferrules would go in easier. But using the lathe, I could get that down to just the perfect diameter. And you can see what I mean. It can,
Oh, you got it chucked up in a drill.
that's kind of annoying. You can't even see it.
Oh, looks. Let's clean it up just a little bit.
Just enough that they can slide right in until they slide right in.
That's seems like a pretty good fit.
That's too long. I would go ahead of that. That's too long.
Nope.
Yeah, now we're on something new. Go back a little bit. Right after this, when it switches, you stop. There, stop, pause. TK will explain this now. And Addie will grab the little. What this is for is I'm building one of the Lucy Flying V's and it needs a jack plate
Uh-huh.
for the output jack. And it's to be a circular one and it's built out of beautiful fancy walnut. And we decided to make our own. And TK can explain to you how he did it. And later on, we can hold up the little piece that's finished. And we're now, Addie's been back there putting an oil finish on it with walnut oil.
But again, this is kind of what I have over the years found so appealing about having a lathe or a mill. It allows you to, if you can think of something, it's highly likely with enough time spent laying things out, there's almost nothing you can't do with a lathe and a mill. Lathes essentially doing round things, mills can do straight things. And between those two things, it's essentially the Industrial Revolution. And in this situation, we wanted to come up with something a little nicer for the V than might have been standard. And so I used a pocket, a hole saw to drill out a sheet of brass to end up with a blank. Do you have any of those earlier? Probably not.
Only the
photos. Anyway, that's about 2 inches.
no,
I think it's 1 inch and 3/4 diameter. And I cut it out of some brass that I think it was around 50 thousandths thick, and drilled holes other than a center hole for the jack itself. In the brass, I drilled a series of holes around the circumference to use in aiding the epoxy to go between the two surfaces. So it's really a sandwich between the two layers of walnut, so that the glue was all the way through it rather than the two flat surfaces on either side of the brass. So clamped that up, very rough outline, and let it sit till the next day. And we mounted it up in the lathe and got it round on that piece of maple dowel that we used, so we could center it as well as get it parallel to the chuck. What prompted having to do this is that we took the aluminum, or excuse me, the walnut that we were going to use for the project and put it in a thickness sander, and it came out after one pass, probably because the sled might have been too small, but it came out that it was tapered significantly, even over the 2 inches. So to get it parallel again, this was the arrangement that we came up with. Again, highlighting the versatility of having a lathe. I mean, we kind of would have had to start over again if we only had the thickness sander to deal with getting these two sandwich layers to the correct thickness. So once it was tapered, we started this process of mounting it up in the lathe to use. The next picture will show
that piece of maple in the jaws right there is the 2-inch round that somebody had. It was a rolling pin.
Yeah.
Make a rolling pin out of it. And
because the diameter of that plate.
So the piece that we're aiming for when this is all done is this piece right here.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yes, the 2 layers of walnut and the brass.
And then and this as well.
No, that was just a piece of scrap or stock that had been in a drawer and happened to be the right thickness and bulk to provide the sandwiching that we needed. So I drilled all the assembly and squoze the whole mass together to prevent any delamination.
And this is am I seeing a blurry screw head or bolt head back here?
That's the the bolt head, and you can see that the nut on the backs, the nut on the
Okay.
backs behind the jaws.
And Dan, just once again, what's this part gonna go on the guitar?
It's gonna go on one of the Albert King Flying V's that I make.
So
And
that's the fancy out, it's like the output jack washer.
yep, and it'll sit on the face of the guitar like an old original V.
Uh,
And it's probably pushing an inch and 7/8 in diameter.
okay, cool.
And it's just made that way to be pretty. Because it'll look really, now this is the way he chose to sand that thing, which I thought is pretty interesting. You can pause that one.
See, there's a perfect
Oh, of the taper, yeah.
the paper. Yeah, that's the unfinished portion there was what we were trying to get rid of. And of course, to try to do that absolutely parallel without a lathe, I think would be, challenging task
Very, very challenging.
with the lathe.
And so this, just going back to this, is there a taper on this from?
Yeah. Got a slight taper. Just it's strictly an aesthetic. We were looking at, I think, oh, do we want it square to the body of the guitar or slight? It's strictly arbitrary.
Okay. And then you put that taper on with the lathe?
Yes.
Awesome.
I thought that was a cool way to sand it.
Yeah, it really
So-
is.
Tool post block with squared up to the spindle of the lathe. It's going to be dead parallel, and so with a little sandpaper on a tool post and the tailstock feed screw, you provide just a little bit of pressure on the sandpaper while it's rotating. It did a beautiful job.
What about, this is the rolling pin again? Oh, hold on a second. What's happening here?
That was the dowel that I used clamped up in the jaws and turned it to have a hub of 3/8 so I could keep the disc sandwich assembly centered
Cool.
while profiling it.
Awesome. So that's the pregame. Cool.
Right.
Anybody have any? Let's see if we got any questions about what we've seen so far. Anybody have any questions? How do I unshare screen here? Where'd my share screen thing go? Oh boy. All right. Anybody have any questions?
The small lathe that Dan has, what size and what make is that?
I have two of them now. One of them is a Unimat. Emco, they don't make them anymore, but you can find them online. And I would say that is a 3-inch, a 4-inch lathe, 3 to 4 inch.
Okay.
Swing.
Lathes are designated by the swing that is able to be on the spindle. So a 3-inch lathe could hit a 3-inch diameter circle before it started to hit the lathe itself. So it's
Okay.
not necessarily an indicator of the size of the machine necessarily. It's just what can be chucked up in the lathe as maximum diameter.
It's a
Okay.
Unimat 3, so that makes it a 3-inch.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just bought another Unimat. And I got that yesterday.
Was that
This-
to replace the one that you sent me?
Well, it's just like that one. It's so I'll always have parts for one, or
Yeah.
if this breaks, I'll have one because I love it that much.
And we
Alright.
also seminars where we want more people, each person to have a little more access with hands-on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody-
All right. Should we take a look at some machines?
Let's finish that video. It's almost done.
Oh, I think it was done. That was, at least that was the last thing that I had.
Then we're on to some machines.
All right.
Can I ask another one real quick? I'm just looking, so Micro Mark, they have small mills and small lathes. I mean, this one says 3.5 inch by 17 inch. Is that worth
Can you-
it, or
Can you put a link into the chat? I'll look at it.
okay? I'll do that.
Is that Micro Mark?
Micro Mark, yeah.
I know Micromark. I don't recall having seen a lathe. Are you talking about a lathe, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, they've got, is it the Proxon? Is that the one?
This one says shoreline.
Yeah, Shoreline.
Erlewine could be good. Put a link in there. How much is it? That tells me a lot.
It's actually quite expensive. Well, this says ultimate machine shop package. So I think this is a mill and a lathe. It's 4261. But I believe it's a
4,200.
mill, it's a mill and a lathe. Two
TK, aren't the Shoreline people, aren't they a little cultish? Do you know Shoreline people? I'm just kidding.
I'll put the link in it though, in the chat.
Yeah, that would help because if it is a package, they could be including a lot of accessories that are pretty almost required because you know
they're showing quite a bit here. I mean, I'll put the link in there,
Here, I'll go ahead and pop this up just so we know what we're talking about.
but there's a whole bunch of stuff here.
So the Micromark catalog, for people that don't know, is they've got a lot of interesting stuff. It's model making, essentially a catalog for model makers. And so they have a lot of this stuff, but let's see if they have the one that
Ian,
so
the item number is 88652. For
I
the
see
mill. Yeah, 88652 for the mill and the lathe. Yeah, there you go.
There's an 88653. Oh,
that.
oh my goodness.
That's you're getting one of each. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It's a
Yeah.
package. Yeah, it says ultimate machine shop package.
I'll bet those would be great. No doubt that's about the same size as the Unimat, but a longer.
It's a lot of money. It's not cheap, but
Yeah.
No, that's bad.
And the non-package item was $1,000, was it?
Yeah, for just the lathe, I think.
That's what I spent on the Grizzly, which we're gonna go show you that.
Yeah. It's also, but those are that package looks like it's two standalones, whereas the Grizzly is a combo, I think.
Yeah, the Grizzly may not be quite that quality. I can't say because it's 2-in-1 for $1,035.
Well, I know when you look on like Craigslist and you see the Shoreline stuff on there, it really seems to hold its value. I'm not exactly sure why, but
it's good. I had a Shoreline mill that I gave to Dave Fliss. It's it was pretty lightweight, I thought. The machine, and wasn't a lot of iron in it.
oh, okay, yeah.
That doesn't mean that this one, a lot of it would have to do with the weight of it too.
Yeah. On a machine that size, like, what would you do? Like clamp it down to your bench if it was light, or like put some dogs on it?
Anyway,
Yeah, it's got to go down to be, because if they vibrate at all, that will show up eventually in the finish of the tool on its the finished surface finish of the material. And bolting it down just takes one more option for vibration to stay out of the picture.
Yeah.
Years ago, there was a home shop machinist, kind of a really excellent magazine that came out. I think it was 4 times a year, and a lot of the competitions that were done in model making, people making B-52 models to scale, or little Ferraris, and almost all of them were using the Shoreline mills at the time and lathes. I think because they might have been, long before Grizzly was making these kind of small combo machines, and they were very versatile. And some of the machine work that I saw come out of those competitions were sponsored by Shoreline, by the way. They did some extraordinary work on them. They're fine machines, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Should we take a look at some machines?
you follow too.
You want to start with show the XY table? And I'm going to grab another bit.
Oh, Doug, are you still there? Let's see here. I got it. All right. Oh, Patty, you've got a filter on your on your Zoom. I don't know do you know how to take that off?
Maybe.
I think if you swipe right, it'll give you the filter options.
Can you see the delta here?
I can, yeah.
That's the rusty old one that Elise has used a couple of times. Mostly it lays on the floor. That's when she cleaned the rust off. TK took phosphoric acid to that chuck and then put it in the lathe downstairs and polished it. But look at that's brand new. It was so full of wood dust and stuff here that you could barely use it. And there's the little handle we made.
Oh, that's cool. Hey Dan,
Otherwise-
so you've got cross slides on that. What like a fellow always wonders, what are the limitations of the cross slides? And like if you throw cross slides on a drill press, like at what point are you up against you probably ought to get a mill instead? And how much can you actually do with a drill press with cross slides?
You can do a lot on a drill press with cross slides, not as much as on a mill. But for this show, I went over and bought that Central Machine Company.
Oh, the Harbor Freight one, yeah.
Harbor Freight. And it was 8 inches, and this one's 6. I could never use the other one because it would be this tall. So even this one, I borrowed this one from Joey. Use your volume.
Oh, hold on.
Maybe that one is.
Are we good?
Testing.
Yeah, we're good.
This one was covered in rust, but I got it working. But having one of these, I was testing to see if I could cut nut slots on it. And I definitely could. I'd want a little smaller one. And I'm going to look for a milling vise that'll fit this better for Elise. But I couldn't be without one as far as the jigs and tools and things that you make, because you can be on center.
Oh, okay.
And you can do a certain amount of milling with them to better the quality of the piece. If you had a $2,000 drill press and a $69 vise, you could probably do some killer work. It's all in the weight and how solid they are.
TK, okay, can I ask TK really quick? See there?
She's going to get them.
Oh, okay. No. If he's got to get ready on the other lathe, let's go ahead and
I think he's going to be giving a little demo on this Grizzly.
okay, cool.
I think that's his intention right here.
Awesome. Man,
We
that
just
thing
got
looks a lot cooler than in real life than it does in the catalog. Is this TK, is this a relatively new machine to Grizzly? Like, I don't remember seeing this one
I'm not
in the
sure
catalog.
particular size. I think they've been making combo machines like in this vein for a good while. And my initial impression, like it's just been unboxed 2 days, is value for dollar is outstanding. I mean, the motor really runs well and smooth, has a good bit of torque. I was testing it out earlier, and it'll take with, a sharp bit and working on brass, it would take 50,000 cuts without any resistance at all from the machine. Anything that's brand new, I mean, it's got to work it in a little bit, but I'm pretty impressed with it for.
Yeah. And
or,
what's the price on this guy?
$1,035.
How many RPM is the mill? That looks like a pretty serious motor on the mill side of things.
But we're going to turn it on.
Yeah, it's up to 2,000 RPM.
2000, okay.
Which is for turning is more than enough.
Yeah.
What we don't have today is a chuck for the tailstock, see? That's
Oh,
one,
okay.
it didn't come with it, and I never thought of it. And we can't, this doesn't fit that. They're both
Yeah.
more taper, but they're different tapers.
Okay.
So we need to buy this real quick to use that. But I think TK should take over for a second and run this thing.
Yeah, just had make a couple cuts, and here's over on the bench top, Dan. Here, I laid out some tool bits here that we were talking about boring bars and so forth, and here's just a couple of examples of grinding tools for a specific job, forming tools so that you can get a radius that you might need for a particular item, or a counter. You know, these are all just old drill bits and stuff that were ground into cutters. This is, you know, for like a counter bore, and you know, small grooves that might be needed for something. But if you can grind it, you can cut it. It's almost limitless. This is a store-bought boring bar that is also used for internal threading.
Does that have does that have something to add a cutter to the end of it? I'm having a hard time seeing. Like, is there like a?
This is a carbide insert.
Oh, carbide insert. Okay, cool.
And it's 60 degrees for threading. But you can also put a different type of insert in there to use just as a regular internal dimension for boring and so forth.
If you lay them down and point to them, I can get a better photo.
And here's a homemade slotting or cutoff tool versus this is a, you know, store bought that came with one of the Unimats. And these are just home ground tools that were needed for a specific job, and they probably were ground and used once, and they've been used once and back in the drawer ever since, you know. Kind of another versions of boring bar store bought, and then these would fit any of these little old drill bits that you can grind down to fit something. So there's almost limitless ways to use a boring bar, but the tooling for the most part on these small boring bars can be used with old drill bits. It's just high-speed steel.
Let's turn that machine on.
Yeah.
So can you use high speed steel to cut high speed steel, or do you need to like go up and?
You can, for sure.
Okay.
Folks have gone to carbide these days. I still prefer high-speed steel. I think I like the finish better, and the smaller machines don't have, you know, carbide likes real rigid setups, and they're great for new tools, CNC, that kind of stuff. They're really great. But I'm just kind of old school because the high-speed steel is easily available. It's cheap, and it cuts beautiful finishing on most all materials, brass, stainless steel, whatever.
Dan, you're yeah, you're covering the camera.
I'm trying to get a.
Can you talk about safety really quick for the fellas here that like to wear their hair like the Grateful Dead?
Hair, sweaters, jewelry, sleeves, none of it. None of it is acceptable. I've been married happily for many years. I don't wear a ring, anything around machinery. Ears, eyes, everything. It's just take the precautions ahead of time.
Like that machine right there will suck you.
Area.
Even that machine will suck you into it, right? Like
just agree. I mean, if you like to use your fingers, it's definitely dangerous for fingers. It might not break your leg, but you know, it's I treat them all the same. Variable speed, which is really nice. No belt changes or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
This is a high-speed steel cutter on a piece of cartridge brass, you know, standard soft brass. And
And what kind of things come up that you need a brass piece cut like this? Like it must come up all the time, right?
can't quite hear you.
Oh, I was just asking Dan, like in the repair shop, like what, I mean, obviously like you can create a ferrule for a guitar. That's pretty killer. But what other kind of uses for this? I'm sorry, TK, did you want to keep going with that?
No.
I was just,
That's
Things like this. We got stuff out. I was able to make tool holders for my Unimat.
uh,
If you try to buy them, they don't make them anymore and they're expensive. I made this tool holder to hold a knurling tool. The bottom of the knurl hung out here.
uh,
Make things like T-nuts
yeah,
for the lathe. When you need them and can't find them, you make them. These are made to fit the Unimat.
yeah,
Make things like
Here's the truss rod part.
the truss rod nut of a size and a length that I needed to finish the job.
yeah,
Things like
The hold on clamps there.
I see them.
Mm-hmm.
oh. Did you make those string through ferrules back there that look like brass?
These,
Yeah,
yep.
Those were before we made the full length, figuring that the more contact that they had going through the body, the better the tone.
These were made also to look fancy,
yeah, well, they do
just
indeed.
to look pretty on some of the original black walnut from my old stash.
Yeah. TK, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Do you want to
Oh, this-
make
We
this?
might as well, this is part of the deal. We might as well finish
I think
here.
in some
Okay.
ways it's an important part of it because what you can make with the lathe is what you need at the time. I have used machine tools over the years far more for either modifying tools or making tools that are
Yeah.
needed. Here's an example of a.
I'm showing this
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
Is that a collet? What is that?
This is a double threaded piece that can thread on the end of a fender truss rod that's broken at the nut end,
Uh-huh.
and then have another screw jammed against it at this end and tighten it and then back it out.
Okay.
And I've made a number of these over the years. And without that, I wouldn't be able to pull that truss
Yeah,
rod
you'd
out.
have to you'd have to take the guitar, you'd have to take the neck apart, right?
And here's another tool I made earlier on. It's a tap follower, so that you can use a tap wrench in a lathe or a drill press, and it's spring loaded, so you can preload it from the spindle, and it will be directly in line and put pressure on the tap exactly in alignment with the hole. So you can, again, a tool like that, I don't know what it would cost to purchase, but it's larger than most that you see around a shop. I don't know, but it's in 2 or 3 hours, make a tool like that and it lasts the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's part of the satisfaction of the machine tools is kind of what you can build for yourself and reuse over time. It's a toolbox full of stuff that is useful.
Yeah, is that a bridge glue up screw? What is
That's
that?
one of those bridge screws. But one I made, because I made them before Stu Mac ever made them.
Tell us what that does.
If you put a nut on this can bolt a bridge to a guitar, and it's got a hole in the center, and you can run a string up through it and string the bridge up.
Okay, cool. So is that for like testing your intonation and making sure your bridge is going on the right?
Testing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Here's a cool thing that TK made. It's going to be for this Telecaster we're making. It's the ferrule that goes in from the back and tightens from the front.
Here's the original, like we used for the Flying V,
Uh-huh.
and it was the version that came up subsequently, which would allow us to put thread it and have it captured on both ends as it goes through the guitar body, instead of just the slip fit at one end with the Flying V version.
Yeah.
Those holes finished drill through it, but it would promote absolute great contact of the string ferrule through the body, and it can be tightened down to instead of a slip fit.
We did have one of these around.
What's that?
One of those, I thought, a
Mm.
finished one.
Not a finished. Well, it's finished all the way to the final hole, which was a 60 thousandths through the center.
Stuff like that.
Cool. All right. Want to do some more cutting?
So what I'm surprised about in some ways is, it'll take a pretty heavy cut without any showing signs of pressing the motor or the lead screw. The machine just runs beautifully for being a 2-foot machine. It's
You can sit down at this very comfortably. You want a chair?
I'm good for a moment.
TK, it looks like there's access to the other side of that spindle on the other side. Is that for like putting a buffer on or something, or what's?
I can show you right here. So if you bring
This,
Oh no, there's a hole in the side that looks like it's in line with the chuck.
not sure.
Oh, on the opposite side of the case, like. Oh, is that for feeding material through the inside of the machine?
Yeah.
Through the chuck?
Spindle, right? So you can put
Okay.
put something in, make your features that you need, cut it off, put another one through.
Ah,
the bigger the lathe, the bigger the piece you can put through one.
okay.
So you could put a 2-foot bar in there and be cutting off 1-inch chunks.
Threading it or whatever operations needed to do, and then use a parting tool to cut it off and
Okay.
start again.
So can you talk a little bit about the chuck on that?
It's a 3-jaw scroll chuck. I think the capacity is 1.5 inch item diameter that you can put into the chuck. And it's the fit and finish of the chuck is really great for the price point. It comes with a separate set of jaws, so that instead of just grabbing from the center line, you can put a different set of jaws in here, and it will hold from the inside instead of from the outside. So if you wanted to put a big ring in there for something, or if you just needed to hold from the inside diameter of something, and all the machining seems to be quite in line. I don't see a lot of indication of poor workmanship. I know it's all CNC these days, but it's a very capable little machine so far. We're still exploring it for sure.
Really cool.
Let's see the drill bit, the drill press run, or the milling machine. It uses a chuck, not collets.
Is there any use where you would use the two machines at the same time? Like, would you drill into something that you had chucked up into the lathe, or?
You wouldn't certainly wouldn't use it simultaneously, but the having something chucked up like that at the same time, you can get your mill involved. Oh, got tools all over the place here. See a chucky anywhere, Dan?
Chuck me?
Uh-huh.
I'm imagining you're drilling holes in a flute that you're making, maybe? I don't know.
Sorry, Ian?
Oh, I was trying to think of what you would use it for, but the only thing I could come up with is maybe making a flute. I don't know. I was just mostly joking.
Okay. Well,
Does the mill start part of it, does that stay perpendicular to the bed of the
yes,
the
it's
lathe?
both castings in the backside. It doesn't have a swivel head or anything like that.
Okay.
Sure.
Was there much to getting this machine squared up when you were assembling it, or was it?
Well, it's all one piece so far. I haven't trammed the mill head part of it yet, but I'm I would just bolt it down and make sure, since it's gonna, on something this short, it's gonna be hard to get the bed twisted enough to have the tailstock out of alignment with the spindle, but it'll have to be checked once it's bolted down and so forth. But right out of the box, other than cleaning off the cosmoline, it was
That was a bit of a chore. They put it on everything. It's still on the chuck.
Can you talk a little bit about tramming the mill? What that
Sure.
means?
Trimming is where once the lathe is set up and bolted down, you in making exploratory cuts that keep the tramming process is to make sure that the quill is perpendicular to the bed and that the X and Y axes are what they should be. And
Okay.
the is normally done on a mill that has a swivel. So most knee mills and stationary mills have an option to either nod the head one way or the other or tilt left to right, kind of like the Arboga over here we show. But that's just the process of making sure that the quill is parallel and square to the bed.
Okay.
Hold this. This has a feed like you normally find on a drill press. It's kind of gross for movement, and this also permits you to this particular mill.
Thanks.
Have a still fraction here. There we go. So it has a feed that will feed in thousands on a scale when you get close to where you need to be for precision work. Or if you pull this plug out, it becomes like a standard drill press, a gross feed rather than a fine feed. So once you have your milling set up close, then you put it into the fine feed mode, and it permits a reduction in dimension in the thousands rather than kind of guesswork with a
Awesome.
quill feed.
Dan, can you true up bone saddles with this or bone nuts or anything? Oh, Dan, I lost you. Let's see here. Danny, can you hear me?
Looks like we've got some accidental mutage.
Yeah. Let me see if I can figure out where he's at here. Where'd you go?
Hello.
There we go. All right. Dan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, cool.
How are we doing on time?
It's 4:12. Do we want to go down and see that see that South Bend, or do you want to talk about this one? Is there more to say about the Grizzly?
So you know, and I'll make a couple.
Oh yeah, yeah, Unimat.
You're gonna, what down there, TK?
I'm just gonna pull out some stuff like the milling attachment.
Because we're not gonna go a lot longer.
Okay, I'll just pull out quicker.
That'd be my guess.
So is that Grizzly something that you would recommend to someone with no experience? Just wanting to get into it?
I sure would.
I was always under the impression that the 2-in-1 kind of thing was you'd be better off of just one of the things, but
I think that would be true, but if you could get into just learning for $1,000, then the rest, as you go through life, you'll be doing more and more, buying more and more tools. This tool here is 36 years old, and it's still just a wonderful little machine.
Those will still set you back $1,000 too, right? Isn't the Unimat about $1,000 machine?
Yeah, this will still set you back.
And they do make a Unimat combo, but I don't think the mill is as nice on the Unimat as the as that Grizzly. Like that Grizzly motor on that is like looks pretty substantial.
The combo of the Unimat, you have it.
I do, yeah.
That bolts on to the back here, and it's really stable. It's amazing. And I used to make pneumatic bridge pins, pneumatic saddles on it.
Yeah,
And that's a very hard to make little thing to make it fit.
yeah.
But it's a pain in the ass because you have to take this off, right? Those two bolts. Take this head out and mount it on that stand, and then milling machine.
Yeah. I'd say if the Grizzly will work, I mean, it's certainly a lot handier to have two independent motors.
Absolutely, but if I was just starting out and could have had a Grizzly machine like this, I would have learned a lot more, a lot quicker.
You know, Danny, the thing that I would say that's kind of limiting this thing is like, you know, like if you had a standalone mill, like you can imagine the lathe part of it is not in the way. So if you wanted to like, you know, put a guitar neck in a vise, you know, and have the body hanging out into space, you could do that with like a standalone mini mill.
That's true. This is a little small for that, but absolutely you could bolt into that.
Mhm.
I agree. But I think that was Danny that asked that question.
Yeah.
yeah.
But just for that kind of money, you'd learn so much, and
Yeah, that sounds worth it.
I think it is.
For
I
my
just checked.
favorite-
I don't have to run downstairs all the time with that around. This mill cost me $5,000, and that's probably 1960s. And they painted it. It has power feed. I love that. It's a millwright,
Digital readout. Changed mine.
and it has the digital readout. So something like this, you
Well,
can find
how much was that vise?
how much the vise.
Yeah, the vise is like $1,000, isn't it?
Probably not as Grizzly.
Oh, okay.
I'll bet it's 500 or 400.
But
Okay.
for a Kirk angle vise, you're probably looking at $2,500 for the best of them, and there's no, and this level is serviceable as anything you could get.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
So here's the 39, and I what came down to drag this out because this is their equivalent at the time of the combo machine. This is an accessory that
That's what I was talking about.
mounts in place of the compound. You pull this out with a couple of set screws, and this will mount in there, which permits you to put a cutting tool in the headstock and do cross or XY operations on a lathe. Normally, this is the work holding, and this is tool holding. And once you can flip that around, then it becomes essentially a mill, allowing you to do straight grooves, cross sections, which normally you couldn't do without the milling attachment. It's not terribly, the capability of what you can mount in here is limited, but only in terms of the size of the lathe. It's more than necessary, or more than capable of anything that you could mount in there. It will machine. But that's kind of the way that they addressed the combo machines of the day back in the 30s, I think.
So what would you would put like a flywheel in that, or what would be the tool that you would put in that?
You'd have the cutter here.
Right, and then you mount your workpiece in here, which is normally you're mounting your work in a chuck
Oh, okay.
and working it. Whereas with this in place, whether you turn it, this way and this whole assembly will tilt as well. So it gives you a lot of degrees of freedom in terms of the angles you could put on something. Some people, you can mount a Dremel tool, for instance. You could put in there and end up using it as a precision grinder. It's just, it's hard to.
So how much travel is on that unit? It goes up and down as well?
Yes, right. There's the gibways here, and you're looking at about 2.5 inches of travel on these gib screws here. And it also rotates to a 90 degrees through the way it's assembled on the back. You can
Oh, wow.
angle here, as well as once this is in the cross slide, it'll rotate 360 as well.
Wow. And did that ship with that machine, or is that an add-on?
Accessory it's a South Bend accessory factory options at the time. They made the accessories that were available were things like lathe stops or different change gears. If you wanted to put metric gearing options for threading items, you could get those. But for the most part, they really didn't have all that many accessories. They were sold fairly complete.
Cool. Can we talk about the change gears a little bit and how that works?
For a lot of early lathes, if you wanted to change the rate of feed on the lathe, you would have to change the gears. There would be a map, so to speak, available with the lathe that would show which gears you had to change to what number of teeth to cut a particular thread per inch.
That's the way my old Atlas was.
So if you wanted like a 1/4 20 thread on something, there would be a specific set of gears that you would align or in sequence to make that. What they came up with later is this quick change gearbox, which if you want a 1/4 20, so you'd look here to say 20 threads per inch, you could just, if you line the map up with those numbers that you need 20 per thread or 20 per inch, and that a 1/4 20 is a standard SAE dimension. But if you wanted to have something 3 inches in diameter and put 20 threads per inch, it doesn't matter. It allows you to make custom threads if you wanted to, but for the most part, you're just trying to copy something that will fit standardized threads or nuts, whatever.
And just to be clear, what that's doing is that's feeding the cutter. That's feeding the cutter down the ways, right? Like,
yes, it's your when it's engaged, it will move. For instance, the second set of numbers here under 20 is 0.0171. So that's moving 17 thousandths of an inch per rotation of the chuck. So it's not just the threads per inch, but it also is an indicator of the finish that you want off a particular material. So if you're just hogging things off, you can go ahead and have an automatic feed move quickly. And when you get to where you really want a finer finish, then you can just slow down to the dimensions 7 thousandths per cut, or all the way down to 1,000th feed per rotation. And you can hand feed if you're trying, working on something and get pretty good results. But if you really want to fine feed or fine finish, then you would use the power feed to get a consistent finish. It really changes a lot. You can try to be as smooth as you possibly can to show no tool mark changes, but you just can't beat a power feed.
So, and is there a special tool for cutting threads? Like, is there like a
All standard threads, I guess, whether it's metric or not, you're using a 60-degree tool bit. This is offset, but when the material, when it actually touches the tool, when it actually touches the material, is going to leave behind a included 60-degree angle, which is the standard angle for all threads. I'll quickly move in here and show you. You would put, for instance, if this was the material in the lathe, this is a little fishtail tool that allows you to judge when you could adjust your tool so that it comes in exactly at 60 degrees. Because you know, if you're off by just a hair, your nuts and threads won't work. So this is how you'd line it up, and this is the tool that you'd use for all threads, except for square threads or Acme or whatever. There's strange stuff out there as well.
yeah?
But we'll cut a thread all the way to 224 threads per inch, which is what a micrometer might use, all the way to a pipe thread that is, 4 threads per inch.
Very cool.
It is.
Dan, are you cutting threads on there very much?
Not me.
Ah,
I might learn.
cool. What's the red handle for?
Power.
Yeah.
That's on. I have never cut a thread. I've only used dies.
Uh-huh.
I've read about it and never had time in my life to really do it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have TK, so
We can stop working on guitars. We can start playing with machines.
TK, that does raise an interesting point. Like if I was to make a truss rod, or if you were to make a truss rod and you wanted to thread the end of it, would you check up the rod in this and cut it with this for the threads, or would you grab a die and go after it with a die?
I would definitely go if it was something important like that. I'm going to cut threads because a die is great 90% of the time, but when it really wants something to make sure it's just so, I would use the lathe, and it allows you to take a cut and test fit, take a cut and test fit. Whereas a die, you only get one result.
Yeah.
Some of them are adjustable, of course, but you can really make beautiful threads on a lathe like this for sure.
Yeah.
if I was making a truss rod, which I have plenty of times, I'd still put it in the lathe and use my die because it gets going. You can turn it on and you could tap the whole a 2-foot piece in 20 seconds.
Time is on.
And it's clean. It's a clean tap.
All right. Do we have any questions? Anybody?
Go
Isaac,
back
do
upstairs.
you have a question? You look like you're trying to unmute. Is that, are you buying something on eBay? I can't tell.
Hey, no. I've got a quick question about the Unimat 3. I've got the DB200, and I guess I wonder if the parts are compatible between the two. I don't know if you know that.
That's the older one, right?
I think so. It looks a little smaller, and the other, I guess another thing is the power feed on that. Does that come standard with that?
The other one looks kind of like TK's lathe here, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like that, but I could pick it up with one hand.
And that's the one I first used. I would think the parts would be interchangeable.
Okay.
Should we go back upstairs?
No, you don't got it just for me, but I love the DB200, but it's so small, it's very limited.
The lathe that I just bought, the Unimat, did not come with the power feed. I had to buy that extra.
Gotcha.
I hadn't thought of that either because I've had one so long it never occurred to me, but when it came, it didn't have one.
Right.
I can't remember. Does mine have one? Power feed makes me nervous.
Go the Arboga?
I think yours does.
Yeah.
I would think.
Like you don't want that tool getting into the chuck, right?
No. I'm back sitting upstairs.
Any other questions? Michael Bashkin, how are you doing? Awesome.
He is awesome.
I've got
Thanks
a
for the,
comment, not a question.
Okay.
Thanks for the tool tour.
So I just checked, they've got I think it's the flagship Grizzly store in my town in Springfield, Missouri. They actually have one of those Grizzly dual machines, the 937 or whatever it was, of the scratch and dent area right now, if anybody's interested.
Cool.
They're usually, 20-30% off for very low
That's
payment.
I spent.
Patrick, you're in Minnesota? Is that right?
Springfield, Missouri.
Missouri. I knew it started with an M. I knew there was an M in there somewhere. Cool.
Scratch and dent's great way to go.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't imagine they would sell something that was functionally impaired, but if the scratches and so forth are enough to get that kind of price break, boy, oh boy.
I mean, if somebody were interested, I could run over there and give them an idea of what's going on with it. It's 5 minutes from my house.
I think we're done here, guys.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you very much. TK, thank you very much. Addie,
Anytime.
thank you very much, Addie, for helping out and getting all the tech stuff squared away. We really appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Do you how old is that lathe?
1939. It's South Bend, and it's 9-inch by 36.
Uh-huh.
Refurbished it probably 20 years ago. I got it in 1979, and it's just been a stalwart, free of failures. Just I had to put some new bearings in it after during the reconditioning, and cleaned up the ways a little bit and gave it a coat of paint. Back in service.
Cool.